Elia had always been fascinated by history, but nothing had prepared her for the discovery she stumbled upon in the dusty archives of Athens. Amid towering shelves of scrolls and manuscripts, she found a thin, weathered volume that seemed almost forgotten by time. Its cover was cracked, its edges frayed, yet there was something magnetic about it. The moment she opened the pages, she realized that this was not an ordinary historical record. The manuscript detailed customs, rituals, and practices of ancient Greece that most modern scholars either overlooked or deliberately ignored. As she read, Elia found herself drawn into a world where human desire, intimacy, and pleasure were approached with an openness and honesty that seemed revolutionary, even shocking, from today's perspective. What she discovered was not merely about eroticism, but about freedom, connection, and the social fabric of a civilization that had long fascinated the world. The first pages described public festivals and rituals where eroticism was intertwined with religion, art, and communal life. Unlike the secrecy and shame often associated with sexuality today, in ancient Greece, expressions of desire were sometimes celebrated openly as part of social ceremonies. Elia was particularly struck by the accounts of certain temple rituals, where priests and participants engaged in acts that modern society would find unconventional or even scandalous. These practices were not merely for pleasure, they held symbolic and spiritual significance, reinforcing community bonds and acknowledging the natural impulses of human beings. As she turned the pages, she realized that the Greeks had a radically different understanding of the body and intimacy. They treated sexuality not as a private or taboo matter but as an integral part of life, worthy of acknowledgement, reflection, and even artistic expression. The manuscript also detailed the complex relationships between men and women, and even same-sex relationships, in ways that were remarkably nuanced. Elia read about mentorship bonds between older men and younger men, often including erotic elements, but framed as education in life, philosophy, and civic responsibility. While modern readers might misinterpret these relationships, in the context of the time, they were considered honorable and socially accepted. Similarly, women's roles in certain festivals and rituals allowed them spaces to explore their own desires and assert influence in ways that contrasted sharply with contemporary assumptions about gender in the ancient world. Elia was struck by the balance of social rules and freedom, where pleasure was not condemned but structured within moral and cultural frameworks. The more she read, the more she understood that these practices were as much about identity, personal growth, and social cohesion as they were about sexual expression. Elia's research expanded beyond the manuscript. She studied sculptures and frescoes from temples and private homes, where erotic imagery was as common as depictions of gods or athletes. She saw depictions of couples in intimate embraces, of communal feasts with flirtation and desire, and even of theatrical performances that blurred the lines between humor, eroticism, and ritual. The more artifacts she examined, the clearer it became that sexuality in ancient Greece was neither hidden nor feared. It was a subject of fascination, reflection, and artistic exploration. These representations were not purely for titillation, they were deeply embedded in the culture's understanding of human nature. Elia felt a profound connection to the people who had lived thousands of years before her, realizing that their willingness to explore the full range of human emotion and desire reflected a courage that modern society often lacked. One particular discovery made her pause for thought. She found accounts of public festivals where young men and women participated in games and challenges that incorporated flirtation and seduction, sometimes under the guidance of elders who acted as mentors and teachers. These events were described not just in terms of erotic content but in terms of fostering relationships, teaching social skills, and cultivating a deeper understanding of human emotions. The manuscript also mentioned philosophical discussions that considered love, desire, and pleasure as fundamental to a well-lived life, subjects worthy of debate and moral reflection. Elia was fascinated by how these practices blurred the line between education, pleasure, and social ritual, creating a holistic approach to life and relationships that seemed both shocking and profoundly human. As Elia continued to immerse herself in her work, she realized that this knowledge was more than just historical curiosity. It challenged contemporary assumptions about morality, sexuality, and human nature. The Greeks, she understood, had a remarkable ability to integrate pleasure into everyday life, to acknowledge desire without shame, and to structure it in ways that enhanced social cohesion rather than undermined it. Their practices, bizarre or unusual to the modern eye, reflected a sophisticated understanding of human behavior and the complexities of social and emotional bonds. For Elia, this realization was transformative. She began to see connections between ancient freedoms and contemporary struggles with shame, repression, and misunderstanding of intimacy. Elia decided that her discovery could not remain hidden. She meticulously compiled her findings into a comprehensive report and began preparing an exhibition that would present the sexual customs of ancient Greece in their historical and cultural context. She anticipated controversy and curiosity in equal measure, but she felt confident that the world needed to understand this aspect of human history. Her goal was not to shock for entertainment but to illuminate the depth and complexity of human relationships across time. She wanted people to appreciate that what may seem strange or unacceptable in one era can be a natural and integral part of life in another. By the time her exhibition opened, Elia's work had already started to spark debate among scholars, students, and the general public. People were intrigued, puzzled, and often amazed at the openness with which ancient Greeks approached sexuality. They were challenged to reconsider their own assumptions, to question the boundaries of social norms, and to reflect on the timeless nature of human desire. Through her efforts, Elia succeeded in breathing life into a forgotten aspect of history, showing that the past has much to teach about freedom, identity, and the human experience. Her journey revealed that even the most unusual customs can hold profound lessons, and that curiosity, courage, and scholarship can transform the way we understand humanity itself. Elia could hardly believe the manuscript she had uncovered. Its pages whispered secrets of a world long vanished, a civilization that had lived with an openness about human desire that seemed almost impossible to imagine in today's society. Each passage she read revealed layers of social life where sexuality was entwined with culture, art, and morality, not hidden or condemned. The Greeks, she realized, had a far more nuanced understanding of human behavior than she had ever expected. These were people who celebrated pleasure as part of existence, who did not shy away from desire but wove it into rituals, festivals, and the very fabric of their society. As Elia delved deeper, she became fascinated not only with the acts themselves but with the philosophy behind them, how a society could embrace eroticism as a means of learning, bonding, and spiritual exploration. Elia's curiosity led her to explore the role of festivals in ancient Greek life. She read detailed accounts of ceremonies where sexual expression was central. These were not acts of licentiousness or chaos, but structured events with clear rules and purposes. Some festivals celebrated fertility, others honored the gods, and many included competitions that involved flirtation, seduction, and even erotic contests. Participants were not shamed but guided, often by elders or priests, to engage in ways that reflected respect, discipline, and communal harmony. Elia was fascinated by how these practices reinforced social cohesion while allowing individuals to explore intimacy freely. Unlike modern societies, where desire is often privatized or stigmatized, these Greeks treated it as an essential and teachable part of human experience. The manuscript also shed light on sexual education in ancient Greece. Young men and women were mentored in ways that combined emotional growth, intellectual development, and physical expression. Older men often guided younger men not only in philosophy, politics, and civic duty but also in understanding relationships, love, and intimacy. While modern readers might misinterpret these relationships through contemporary moral lenses, in their historical context, these were respected and socially sanctioned forms of education. Women, too, had their own roles within private and public spaces, participating in rituals that allowed them to assert agency, cultivate desire, and engage in complex social interactions. Elia realized that Greek society viewed sexuality not merely as pleasure but as an integral dimension of identity and community life. Her research expanded to visual representations. Ancient Greek art, sculptures, pottery, murals, was filled with depictions of erotic themes. Elia observed couples in intimate embraces, figures engaged in communal gatherings where desire and flirtation were central, and theatrical performances that mixed humor with eroticism in ways that modern audiences would find surprising. These artistic expressions were not mere fantasy, they were reflections of societal norms, philosophical ideas, and the cultural acceptance of sexuality as part of human existence. Elia felt that she was witnessing a society that had embraced the human body and mind in their entirety, acknowledging that desire was a natural, essential, and even revered aspect of life. One of the most astonishing revelations for Elia was the communal approach to sexual expression. Certain temples and social spaces were designed for gatherings where intimacy, flirtation, and erotic education were practiced openly. These spaces were often tied to religious or social functions, creating a blend of sacred and sensual experience. Participants were guided by elders or priests, ensuring that acts were conducted with respect, awareness, and ritualistic significance. Elia was struck by how these practices balanced freedom with structure, pleasure with purpose. Sexuality was not chaotic or illicit but a deliberate, meaningful aspect of community life. It was a stark contrast to modern secrecy and taboo, offering her a glimpse into a civilization that understood human nature in a profound way. Elia's fascination deepened when she discovered the philosophical discussions surrounding love and desire. Ancient Greek thinkers debated the role of pleasure, the ethics of relationships, and the nature of attraction. Sexuality was not merely physical, it was moral, social, and intellectual. Love, desire, and erotic expression were seen as forces that could teach, guide, and connect people. These ideas challenged Elia's own assumptions, prompting her to reconsider modern perspectives on intimacy, morality, and personal freedom. She realized that the Greeks had created a culture in which human desire was not feared, suppressed, or ridiculed, but thoughtfully integrated into all aspects of life. As she continued her research, Elia also uncovered stories of extraordinary practices that combined fantasy, ritual, and societal norms. Some festivals included playful games, competitive challenges, and elaborate performances where desire, seduction, and eroticism were celebrated with humor and artistry. These activities were part of a larger framework in which human relationships, emotional intelligence, and social skills were cultivated. The Greeks' approach was neither reckless nor immoral. It was a sophisticated system that acknowledged the complexity of human nature. Every act, every custom, and every ritual was deeply connected to personal growth, community, and understanding the essence of human desire. Elia understood that her findings could challenge modern sensibilities. Presenting these practices to a contemporary audience might provoke shock, curiosity, and debate. Yet she felt compelled to share them, believing that knowledge of the past could expand understanding of human nature. She prepared her report with care, emphasizing not only the unusual or erotic elements but also the cultural, social, and philosophical contexts. She wanted her readers and viewers to see that these practices, while seemingly bizarre, reflected a society's intelligence, creativity, and respect for human complexity. When she finally presented her research, it drew immediate attention. Scholars, students, and curious onlookers were intrigued, some scandalized, others amazed. They debated the meaning, morality, and relevance of these ancient customs. Elia's work sparked conversation about how societies evolve, how norms change, and how human desire remains a constant force through time. Her discoveries reminded everyone that what may seem strange today was once accepted, structured, and celebrated. Through her research, the unusual sexual customs of ancient Greece were resurrected, offering insight into the openness, curiosity, and humanity of a civilization that had long shaped the modern world in ways people seldom recognized. Elia's journey through the manuscripts, artifacts, and philosophies of ancient Greece left her with a profound sense of connection to the past. She had not only uncovered practices of pleasure but had also glimpsed a society that understood intimacy, desire, and human relationships in ways that were astonishingly complex and enlightened. In sharing this knowledge, she hoped to inspire reflection, challenge assumptions, and remind the world that human nature has always been intricate, fascinating, and deeply intertwined with the rhythms of society, ritual, and art. The past, she realized, could teach the present much more than history books often suggest, and even the most unusual customs held timeless lessons about life, love, and freedom. Elia's fascination with ancient Greece deepened with each new discovery. The manuscript she had found was only the beginning. The more she studied, the more she realized how radically different Greek society was in its approach to human desire. Unlike modern societies, which often treat sexuality as private, secretive, or even shameful, the Greeks celebrated it as a natural and vital part of life. Every festival, every ritual, and even everyday interactions had traces of erotic symbolism or undertones, linking human pleasure to social cohesion, art, and spiritual growth. Elia was amazed by how seamlessly sexuality was woven into their cultural, religious, and philosophical practices. It was clear to her that in ancient Greece, pleasure was not an indulgence but a form of education, a path to understanding, and a vital element of existence. Elia spent hours poring over the manuscript's descriptions of communal gatherings and festivals. These events were not solely for entertainment, they had structure, rules, and symbolic meaning. Erotic expression, whether in playful games or ceremonial rituals, was encouraged within strict social frameworks. Young men and women learned about desire, attraction, and emotional intelligence through participation. Older members of the community acted as guides, teaching respect, consent, and the deeper philosophical meanings behind these acts. Elia was particularly struck by the sophistication of this system. Rather than shunning or repressing sexuality, the Greeks had created spaces where people could explore it safely, openly, and meaningfully, integrating pleasure into their social and moral education. The manuscript also highlighted intimate mentorship relationships, often misunderstood by modern readers. Older men guided younger men not only in philosophy, civic duty, and martial skills but also in love, intimacy, and desire. These relationships were structured to build character, social awareness, and emotional depth. Women too participated in ritualistic practices that allowed them to express desire, engage socially, and assert influence within their communities. Elia realized that the Greeks' approach was both liberating and disciplined. Desire was acknowledged, explored, and celebrated, but it was never chaotic or without context. It was intertwined with morality, civic responsibility, and social harmony, demonstrating a remarkable sophistication in understanding human behavior. Art and visual culture further revealed the openness of Greek society. Sculptures, pottery, and murals often depicted erotic scenes alongside heroic, religious, and philosophical themes. Couples in intimate embrace, communal feasts filled with flirtation, and theatrical performances blending comedy with eroticism were common motifs. These artistic expressions were not mere fantasies, they reflected real social norms, philosophical ideas, and cultural acceptance of sexuality. Elia marveled at the confidence and creativity of a society that could treat intimacy as a form of art and a subject worthy of reflection, teaching, and admiration. Each artifact, each depiction, seemed to tell a story of a civilization unafraid to confront and explore the full range of human emotion and desire. One particularly intriguing aspect was the intertwining of sexuality with religious practice. Certain temples and sacred spaces hosted ceremonies that incorporated erotic acts as part of worship. These were not acts of impropriety but symbolic gestures, representing fertility, creation, and human connection with the divine. Participants engaged in these rituals with guidance and reverence, blending sacred intent with pleasure in ways that challenged Elia's modern assumptions. These practices illustrated that for the Greeks, sexual expression could be elevated to a spiritual experience, emphasizing harmony, respect, and communal understanding. Elia also explored the philosophical discussions surrounding love, desire, and erotic expression. Greek thinkers debated the moral and ethical dimensions of pleasure, considering it a vital force in human life rather than a vice to suppress. Desire was studied, discussed, and integrated into the pursuit of wisdom. The manuscript revealed dialogues on the balance between indulgence and discipline, the emotional and psychological impact of love, and the societal benefits of acknowledging human instincts. For Elia, these discussions were enlightening. They framed sexuality as an essential part